Welcome to today's Leadership and Transformation video cast. It's good to have you here. We have been in this series on good call as we have led from God's calling on our lives into how that creates clarity for you and I, how that clarity leads to character for us in an integrated sense of self from place of character. We then moved into curiosity and discovery and wonder and imagination and finding and journeying and all of those pieces. And then from that place of curiosity, we then move into this place of confidence, knowing who we are and being able to act out of that place of who God has created you and I to be able to act out of that calling, out of that clarity, out of that character, out of that curiosity leads to an immense amount of confidence for us as we go about our lives. Today, I want to come to this next word for us. It is the word courage. Courage, friends. What does it mean for you and I to have courage in our lives? And how does courage come out of this place of call, clarity, character, curiosity, and confidence, right? The courage to act, the courage to take a risk in our lives, the courage to come alongside of people. And it's from this place of courage where we'll get into the next several weeks: care, compassion, and connection, right? All of these specific actions that we take in the world as we come alongside of folks. Joshua 1:9 says, "Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. For the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go." Friends, I want you to think about your baptism. And it's the thing I keep bringing us back to theologically, where our whole sense of good call is founded. The very center of our faith is this baptismal identity and calling, right? And this idea that God will go with us wherever we go. So be strong. Be courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. Okay? Do not lose sight of who God has made you to be, because as you go out into the world, God is there with you. The very God who created you, the very God who gives you a clarity about who you are, the very God who gives you a world to have curiosity in. This very God is with you wherever you go. You do not need to be afraid. And yet you and I live in this world of fear. We live in this world of anxiety. Our world right now, literally, our world is so much safer than it was just 30 or 40 years ago. We know this from data. We know this from statistics, friends, right? And yet those of us who live in America are more afraid and more anxious now than ever before. I was just in a conversation the other day about like where would we leave our kids or let our kids go and do, and the conversation surrounded the 70s and 80s, and it was like, oh, it was just a safer time then. No, that is absolutely data point false. Okay? The world was actually far, far less safe then, just from a statistical criminal activity basis, than it is now. It would actually be safer for us to do the things that we did in the 70s and 80s today than it was then. And that's just one data point of how our world is full of anxiety, full of fear, that we actually believe that yesterday was safer than it is today. And generally speaking, when we talk about the global situation, even, the world is better today than it was 50 years ago, than it was 100 years ago, than it was 200 years ago. When we go back into the stories of our ancestors, into their history, when we go into those statistics, the world was fundamentally more dangerous than on almost every single statistical point. On almost every fundamental statistical point. And yet you and I believe, for some reason, that yesterday was safer. And so why do we do that? We do that because we have not taken confidence in who God has created us to be. We're not actually looking at the world and realizing all of the amazing things that have been accomplished through human history. We're not paying attention to the evolution of human society and the things that we have created, right? As a result, we are literally using anxiety and fear to tear it down right now rather than build it up. And so, as we're in this environment of anxiety and fear, what does it mean for you and I to live into our calling, to take confidence, to be courageous, and to take risks in our world? That God has called us, gifted us to go out into the world to take risk. And so, what risk is God inviting you to take this day, this week? And you may wonder, Pastor Justin, what are you talking about? What's this risk that you're asking us to take? The risk is always going to involve other people. The risk is always going to invite you out of your place of comfort and safety into a place that requires some curiosity, a place that requires some confidence, a place that you go, you know what? I feel like I'm breaking in and going across some line that someone has drawn in the sand, some sort of definition, some sort of box, some sort of label that people are using out in society, right? Jesus Christ took risks. The words that he would say were risky. The people he connected with and found himself spending time with was risky, a risk to his reputation, a risk for people to actually call his character into question, right? A risk from a religious, moral, ethical standpoint of people going, I don't think you're supposed to spend time with tax collectors. I know you're not supposed to spend time with prostitutes, right? I know you're not supposed to do these things, and yet this is precisely what Jesus was known for. What are the boundary breaking places in our society where you and I need to go, where the world would be like, is that the wisest move? And that will take us into these weeks to come, into care, into compassion, into this deep sense of connecting with others, even when our world defines it so tightly and so narrowly, right? Of the people I'm supposed to be around, the people that we're not supposed to hang out with, the people that we're not supposed to connect with, the steps that we're not supposed to take. These are the risks that God is inviting you and I into. A small one that I want to introduce to you right now, right, is this. Who will you invite into your faith life? Who will you invite into your spiritual journey? Right? We are so afraid of this word proselytizing and its related cousin, evangelism, in our lives, in our community, in our world, because we're so afraid of becoming those kinds of people. But what if, instead of thinking about I am doing this religious thing, what if I'm doing this spiritual thing? What if I'm doing this faith thing? And I need other people alongside of me on that journey, right? Luke 10 is where Jesus sends the 70 out into the villages, and they are going to these villages and they're saying a simple word to people, shalom, which means peace and wholeness and life. And if it's received, they are literally received into this person's home. They go in, they break bread together, right? It's a simple act that doesn't feel religious, that doesn't feel like spirituality, because it's centered in on neighborliness. Well, that's what our whole faith's supposed to be about, remember? Love God, love your neighbor. right? That's it. That is what faith is. That is what spirituality is. That is what religion is supposed to be about. The book of James says that religion that is pure and undefiled is taking care of the widow and the orphan in their distress. Right? But you and I keep putting these other words with religion, these other words with theology, these other words with spirituality and faith that makes it inaccessible, that makes it something that is proselytizing. But what if it's about neighborliness? What if it's about peace? What if it's about shalom? What if it's about taking care of the orphan and the widow in their distress? What if it's about these everyday things? Then the risk that God's inviting me to take is one that I go, oh, yeah, it's risky, but it's not proselytizing. It's finding my neighbors around me, my workplace folks around me, my family and friends around me, who I can invite in, who will invite me in to do good in the world, to show some to show some care, to show some compassion, to show some connection. That's the courage that God is asking you and I to take. Friends, thank you for joining me for today's Leadership and Transformation cast. I hope you will continue to join us each and every week. I hope you join us each and every day. Pastor Danny will be here tomorrow with our sermon preview. Hope to see you this week, this weekend, this Sunday. And if you're willing, take a risk and share a comment right here on this video about the risks that God is asking you to take, or send me an email or send me a text. I would love to hear from you. Thanks for joining us today.